Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming over and being part of the discussion. Basically, what we're trying to, my thoughts are that if we start talking about some of the things that are coming up for the budget now, rather than wait until September and October when the budget's already in front of us, if there's ways that we can save the taxpayers some money to avoid a property tax increase, that's the goal of the meeting. But there might be some ways that we can, find money that's can be allocated to stop any property tax increases that are. Last year, we needed $1,050,000 to avoid the property tax increase. And we did that through the Packard tax money that was excess, so we used that money, so we didn't have a property tax increase on the city Green Bay side. So basically, this meeting is, a discussion on ways that department heads, you can look on the paper here, that what I call, these are just ideas that I presented, but there's everyone here has a good mind and has ideas and things that, they can bring to the table, which would be helpful, and, maybe finding some money that's sitting there, or whatever it might be, where we can reduce this, and, so we can not have a property tax increase. If you look on the bottom of this one page here, you look at the city's, Green Bay is the top dog as far as the amount that's, paid per thousand. So we're number one. So if we could, avoid another property tax increase, that's where I'm coming from. So, I think that the department heads, within the city, they're pretty well know how they can help out. And, we don't need a lot of money, but whatever we can use, or whatever we can, advocate towards pulling things in line, I think we can do. I gave some figures here, these are just my figures, but last year, we were about $1,050,000 short of the property tax increase, so that's why I'm bringing this forward. You got any questions?
I do. One of the things that, I'm in the business community. What we do is we compare things by ratios, cost of paper, cost of labor, electricity, utilities, the whole thing, and we're able to compare our company to peers through our trade group, so we can basically determine that, okay, the cost of labor should never exceed 27% of your gross sales. Okay, is there, I know that you have the comparisons here, but do we have like the comparisons in a ratio form as to how you compare to either municipalities of your size or to the local municipalities? Because obviously, De Pere is going to have a different police, fire costs than the city of Green Bay. I get that, but if you have those type of ratios, maybe if cities
There is a
similar, that might be helpful for us.
You might be familiar with that book.
I was just going to say,
Right here we have it.
Wisconsin
We got that
League of
information right
Town's
here.
got one too, I
So
see.
we have that per capita.
Okay, so
On some of the stuff.
So is that how the ratios are against? They're what are they? We rate it against gross sales. What do you rate yours against?
There's many different factors, but one's like police over against other municipalities, parks over property taxes.
Over
fire.
their total levy, maybe? Would they do it over the
Kinda
total
depends
levy
upon,
against it?
some is over population, some is over per capita, some is, so it's various features. Police is per capita.
Okay,
What is the per capita of the police in Green Bay?
This outfit assembles it.
okay. Is that a word? Is that a good way of looking at it?
I
This
think
is generally accepted throughout all the political factions when it starts. These are very,
Here's where I think this might be useful. My experience in business is we did all sorts of what we call benchmarking. So I worked in a system that had 5 plants. We all made the same product. And we knew to the penny what our cost per case was for those products. And we knew to the penny all the various components of that. So we knew what our plant in Green Bay spent on energy per case of product versus the other plants. And that information then was used to look for the opportunities. So if our plant was high in energy costs versus the other plants, we found out what they were doing differently to see if there was a way that we could match it.
Sure.
And my personal opinion is I think there will be some opportunity for us to do that sort of benchmarking between Green Bay, and I choose De Pere. And the reason I choose De Pere is De Pere is a city in the same market for contracted services, the same labor market. It has the same disadvantage of being split by a river, so it has to have emergency services on both sides of the river. I look at De Pere's tax rate, and it's about $6.50, and Green Bay's is about $9. And now some of that is difference in home values. So maybe maybe the same house in De Pere is worth more than a house in Green Bay, and that would explain part of that difference. But 6.5 to 9 is a big difference. That is a big difference, and I don't think property values for the same properties, Green Bay versus De Pere, are going to vary that much. That's why I thought there'd be some opportunity to looking at, the various services, what they cost per capita in De Pere versus Green Bay. That'd be one approach.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Whatever you pick, okay, and whatever the rationale is for picking it, then from there it would seem that, well, you gotta get to those ratios. I mean, right, just like you did in your business. If the ratio is we got 1% high in, I don't know, forestry, okay, well, we getting trimmed on forestry to get to that percentage, not an amount of dollars, but a percentage of whatever it is, because obviously the Pere would have a. So I mean, if that's your target is East De Pere or West De Pere in general, then if you make the comparisons to them, I guess it kind of tells you what you need to do. I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is all about looking for opportunities. I'm not saying that Green Bay should be just like De Pere. The people in different communities can make different choices about the features or the level of services that they want. But we should at least understand why the difference is there. So if De Pere, let's say,
Let's take policing, for instance.
Okay,
Diane's
I
got that
have it.
information right here.
That's probably pretty easy.
So police, yep, I will just say, they're in different sections because they group the municipalities by their size.
So is this by capita then, Diane?
This one's per capita, and this one goes up to 2014. They're always about 2 years behind. They call this the 2016 book, but they have history up through 2014. So 2014, city of Green Bay, population of about 104,000. Their cost for their police, we're just looking at police per capita, was $224. I'll round it, $224 per capita in 2014. For the same thing, again, they have fire, they have general obligation operations, and police for De Pere, which is a population of about 24,000. Their per capita, same metric, same formula, is 173. So you're looking at 224 versus 173 for this specific police per capita.
The only problem with that is, I mean, it's a whole different ballgame in East De Pere and West De Pere than it is in downtown Green Bay.
I think we have about 200 police officers in Green Bay State. Roughly 200.
193, I believe.
Just
That's the ratio you're gonna get
And
per
of course, we've got a
population.
lot more police because we're a lot bigger. But on a spending for police services per capita, that should even that out. How many cops per person?
I think you need to probably mix in some kind of crime statistics though, because I don't think.
No, I mean, exactly
I don't know how you mix
I
that
mean,
in.
when you wade into this sort of benchmarking,
Yeah.
you find all sorts of things that you gotta sort through. Are the accounting systems the same? They may be different, and that may explain some of those differences. So it's not just taking the top lines and drawing a conclusion. You have to investigate these things. What I was responsible for in the paper mill, I was responsible for the shipping and warehousing function and the plant utilities. So I was expected to know what my cost, how my costs compared in every category to my other plants that had the same function. And so I think we should understand why there's a difference in police spending per capita between De Pere and Green Bay. Maybe it's a choice that makes sense and we want to continue to make it. We want to continue to spend more per capita in Green Bay. But that's a choice we should at least be fully informed about and make it with an understanding of why.
Yeah, we're just not making widgets. I mean, there are a lot of considerations for police protection. I would
Exactly.
advocate more police in the city of Green Bay based on our location of our company.
And right, I mean, each community can make its own decision on how much it wants to spend, but at least.
And whether or not they're effective.
At least should understand where the dollars are going and what the opportunities are.
Yeah, and you don't want to take the low-hanging fruit either, because that's short-term.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like low-hanging fruit, like we could walk through and we could say, okay, we're gonna take, 50,000 from parks, 20,000 from parks, or not have park program. That's low-hanging fruit. That's kind of the easy things that have impact in the community, but not as great of an impact as removing police, for instance, okay? Because those things, that's what I mean by low-hanging fruit, okay? That it's the easier stuff, what we don't have to have. You don't need to have a park program in a community. But those are things that are quality of life issues. I guess that's how I would equate the low-hanging fruit, is the quality of life issues that make a community great to live in. That you don't necessarily need to have that, but that's what adds to a community. So I mean, those are some things,
And
that's what I mean by
And
that.
every community has to make its choices.
Right,
about
exactly,
that.
okay.
If Green Bay has got a park program, park recreation and forestry program, that is 4 times what the pier has, we should at least understand that, so people know they're gonna pay higher taxes in Green Bay because you have all this additional park recreation and forestry, or you can choose not to have that big of a difference and do something different.
Well, like in De Pere, because I live in De Pere,
Hmm?
they pick up brush 3 times a year. Otherwise, everybody is responsible for hauling their own brush. Okay, that is one difference. So if you're looking at a ratio in terms of what, I don't know what department that falls under, whether it's Public Works in De Pere, Public Works in the city of Green Bay, that is one thing that the city has decided that is too expensive for us to be driving around on a weekly basis picking up your brush. We're not gonna do that, but we'll do that 3 times a year, and I don't know how they determine that. So there are a lot of services that,
Mr. Parents has a comment.
Oh, I just, can we start by, I don't know everyone here, so, and I probably have met everyone, but a little in self-introduction or something, and Tom and I had discussed on the way where we drove over together about how we want to organize this a little bit so that,
That's fine. Start off.
I like dictatorships when it comes to this kind of thing, because someone's got to head it up.
Okay, well,
So-
you start out. Introduce yourself, Mr.
You kick
Parents.
it off.
Okay, Richard Perrins, I was the president of the Brown County Taxpayers Association for 15 years, I believe it was. So then I stepped aside just to get new blood in there for a while. I miss it, but other than that, just, I think I ran for alderman one time, or school board, excuse me. So I've got some understanding of the city, some of the functions and costs and things like that. So, but I appreciate this opportunity.
I'm Tom Slavic. I represent District 12 on the city council, and I'm a retired paper mill worker.
I'm Kevin Keene. I currently own Keene Printing. I currently am the chairman of the governing board at the Neville. I'm a transit director for the city of Green Bay. I formerly was a county board supervisor for 10 years, and I sat on the Metropolitan Sewage Board for 10 years.
Kevin McNamara, work in DPW, signs and marking department, the Labor Association president, city employee for like 39 years.
Diana Ellenbecker, new finance director with the city of Green Bay. I've been in this role about 6 months, and with the city about 8 years.
John Vanderleest, I represent District 10 on the county side, District 11 on the city side, operate Vanderleest Electric and Vanderleest Properties. Been lifelong resident of Green Bay, and I care about Green Bay, and that's why I'm serving.
I'm Steve Greer. I'm the Public Works Director with the City of Green Bay. Been the Public Works Director for about 4.5 years, been with the city almost 10, and spent about 17 years in private practice as a civil engineer and business owner in Green Bay before that.
Pam Manley, I'm the Assistant Finance Director. I've been in that position about 3 months now. I've been at the city for about 4 years.
Lynn Bino, the fire department. I am the administrative assistant to the fire chief, and I do pretty much everything: payroll, AP, AR, purchasing. We have 8 stations, almost 200 firefighters. And before that, I was the legal assistant in the law department for the city. Before that, the legal assistant for Corp Council for Brown County. And before that, worked in child support for many years as well for County.
Boy.
I'm Celestine Jeffries. I'm Mayor's Chief of Staff. I've been here a year. Before that, I was on the school board and city council.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Are you gonna run this?
I can run it.
Okay, good.
Anybody have any
Go
input
ahead.
as far as ideas that they'd like to bring forward?
I think, just a comment, because I've been listening, and I like the approaches, because we've got experience here. Now, what I'd like to marry that up to personally would be the viewpoint of the city employees, because they're the ones that are really driving these expenses, or not driving them necessarily up, down, or sideways, but they're in positions where they have some modicum of control, at least to bring it to other people in the city. So the two approaches, I think, are going to be really good.
Well, I guess I'll take the first cut at it. And one of the things you will learn real quickly about me is I don't tell you what I think you want to hear. You're going to hear what I think you need to hear real quick, and I don't mince words. So there's some of the things in here, especially under item 6 that Alderman Vanderleest has put forward, that cause me a little bit of concern, because I think if we are looking at cutting costs, we are very likely looking at cutting service level. Okay? I can only speak for Department of Public Works, but I think that's where we are at. And I think Kevin made a very valid comment. We collect brush daily. De Pere collects 3 times a year. Okay? That is an expense. But that is an expense that historically city taxpayers have been willing to fund, so that goes to Alderman Sladek's comment. We may be higher in cost because our residents demand a higher level of service. We have often referred to it as Cadillac level service here.
Right.
Okay, especially in public works. So if we're looking at making serious cuts, and if we're looking at getting down over $1 million, we are looking at making serious cuts. Okay? We have to be ready to accept some level of service loss as well. Where I'm not going to make friends is I need to know right up front, are there any areas that are off limits? Or are we going to look
Example.
at everything? Like I said, I don't mince words, I put it right out there.
Well, yeah.
Police and fire historically have been off limits, relatively speaking. Now, they've done their part, don't get me wrong.
No.
Okay? But because they are protective services, they may not have shouldered the same level of burden that other departments have. And we have 3 departments within the city that comprise 75% or more of the tax levy. That's Public Works,
That's a good thing to know. Right?
That is
Police, and fire.
That is a very important thing.
Okay, so if you're gonna cut
But not in that
$20,000
order.
from a
Police,
park program,
fire, then public works.
Okay, so
Right.
the highest cost.
okay, if you're gonna cut $20,000 from a parks program, you're not gonna close $1 million gap. If you're looking at closing $1 million, you're looking at those 3. Everybody else is gonna have to contribute, but you're looking at those 3 to shoulder a lot of this burden.
What does $1.5 million do to the tax levy, to the tax rate? So-
Figure about $63,000 per penny.
I don't know what that means. What does that
You
mean?
cut
What does that mean?
$63,000
So
worth of levy.
$630,000 would be 10
10
cents.
cents, so you could be
on the tax
talking.
rate.
Right.
So how much is that gonna put on my per thousand price? What am I at right now per thousand for the city of Porter?
That's about $9.
$9. Okay, and what is it gonna do for the $1.5 million?
$1.5 million is
$9
gonna
would
be about
probably
25
about
cents.
25 cents.
So 9.25,
We've kept the same rate for the last.
which is what is that, help me with the math here, 10%, not 10%, it's not the dollar, it's less than that, it's 2%, 2.5%, it's 2.5%, right, increase in tax?
You gotta figure in all your NWT tax.
No, I get all
the
that, I
rest
get
of
that.
it.
So
That's
we're
where we
looking
come with our.
We're looking at a 2.5% tax hike if we don't do anything. Is that the number? With my finance people?
Not prepared exactly for that number, but of course, that would be keeping everything flat from last year. However, we know there are already built-in salary increases, some other things that
Sure.
already are in contracts that we would have to take into consideration. So we'd have to
I
overcome
think
them all.
In
But
very
we're looking-
rough terms, you're about
We're
right.
2.5% in rough terms is what we're talking about on the budget. Okay.
But as you know, we have the expenditure restraint program that we use through the state, and that would not allow us to take up, this year we just say, we're gonna bite the bullet, we're just gonna go 2.5% up just to cover that 1.5 million. That expenditure restraint would probably not allow, that would not allow us probably to get that high. I have not calculated, that is probably in this week or next week, I'll do the first pass on what would be the first pass that we could maybe go up based on the CIP and with net new construction, that type of thing. If we don't decide to, at some point, I think I've already heard say, well, why don't we just get out of the expenditure restraint program, then we can do kind of what we want, we can raise it as much as you want. What that does is that gives up about $2.5 million we get from the state. So you can stay out of the program, but you're giving up money that we're getting from the state for being in it. It's a program to make sure that you're only raising your tax rate a small amount each year.
So exiting the program would result in another 3% boost in.
Correct, you would lose 2.5, but then you can raise as much as you want. But
Okay.
Where does that money that the state is giving back to us, are we sending that to them? The city? I mean, are we a net provider or?
we are within their program, so as long as we stay within the calculation, most of it comes in November, but the state sends us a check, it goes into our general fund, it's just another revenue source.
The ERP is it's a revenue stream on the city side, it's a payment stream
Right.
on
State
side.
Money's
that's
coming
part-
from
Part of their
where?
state budget.
Part of the state
So
budget.
Okay, thank you.
presumably, a lot of it is funded through either state income or state sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Sometimes I see money being poured in an inequitable fashion out of certain communities and within the state, and then it, so, but if that's not the case, that everybody's paying sales tax, everybody's paying income tax, no comment there.
Is this committee advisory to who?
Yes.
It would be an advisory, I think, to the city council and then maybe to the mayor.
Who develops the initial budget? Does the
Initial
city?
initial budget is developed by each individual department. Departments submit our preliminary budget to the mayor. The mayor prepares the mayor's draft of the budget that goes to the Joint Personnel and Finance Committee. Joint Personnel Finance Committee makes a recommendation to the council. Council adopts the budget.
Okay, got it.
He's got it.
Okay, no, it's
Well
kind
done, Steve.
of the way that the county worked it. I guess, not really understanding the scope or all of the different programs and everything else, that, I can give some insight as to how we do it in business, but it's almost like, if someone said to you, you had to find 2.5% in your budget, every department had to find 2.5% to cut in their budget. Is that you would know where to cut, I wouldn't, you know what I mean? So, can you do that across the board to the department heads and say, look, you need to find 2.5% in your budget to cut?
And again, Kevin, that's where I come back. My 2.5% is gonna mean something, but if I go to law department and say, you've gotta cut 2.5%, and law department's budget's only $100,000,
Well, it's $2,500.
it's $2,500, that's lost in the wash when we're looking to save. It's a
right.
great,
Yeah,
it's a great thing for equity and to make sure that everybody feels that they're equally invested in it, but that $2,500 really isn't gonna make or break our budget.
well, no, but the $2,500 on their budget of $100,000 is still 2.5%. 2.5%
Exactly.
follows my
No, I
ratio
understand.
strategy across the board, that your department has a third of the, that's not a third, but let's say it's close to a third.
We're close to a quarter of the budget, yeah.
You're a quarter of the budget, so your 2.5%, is a lot more money, but in some respects, you might have a lot more areas to look at too, because it is so much more money. You know, I don't know, that's what I would suggest, that since the department heads, I would just gather are the brightest of where all the money is going in their departments, that if they, that would be the first portion of this, is like, we would make a recommendation as budget heads, here's where my 2.5% is gonna come from, but recognize these are the programs that are going to be gone, okay? And that way, then we have something to at least be talking about, which is really, you know, off of your expertise in your area. Then I could make an intelligent decision as to whether or not, what are the results of that? You know, what is this gonna do to the community as a result of that 2.5%?
Right.
You know, but I would think that you guys would, every department head would have the best handle as to, you know, where they cut, where they could. Anyway, I think that's what I would be looking at. I'd be looking at the department heads, their work, you know, they're in charge, they know the money, all that. Here's what I would do, but just recognize this is the result of that, and then we could look at that perhaps as to whether or not that's something that, you know, this group as an advisory committee only could swallow. I guess, you know.
Sounds like good.
So do
sounds
we
like good advice.
prioritize services or things in the city first, I think, you know, because I think wants and necessities are totally different things. And yeah, we want all the brush to be picked up on a daily basis, but
Is the police and fire, is that, I remember that on the county side, and you're with the county, right? You're
I'm on the county.
You're on the county, okay. The sheriff really has kind of carte blanche. If he needs the money, he's taking the money. That's what I remember from the county board. If there's an emergency and there is a funding necessity, he can take the money as he sees fit, even past his budget. That was my understanding of the sheriff's department. Is that similar to what the police has set up, that if the police, if there's an emergency for the police chief, that he needs to spend a whole bunch of money in an
Like what kind of
emergency?
emergency?
Well-
Okay, fire department, massive fire, bunch of overtime, unexpected, large totals.
Yeah.
There's, okay,
I mean, but those are,
They have their budgets, but if
Yeah.
they exceed their budget, the council has to act to transfer funds.
Right.
okay, I got it.
To cover
But
that.
what I'm
But
saying
it
is, I
isn't-
don't want the police department or the fire department to face a cut that prevents some level of service. It's critical.
well, but let's just talk about DPW too. So when I was on council, I think it was 2007 or 8, we had 84 inches of snow that year. So that means that there's extra expenditures on the
Right.
part of DPW, or, we've had a couple of bad windstorms, even potentially a tornado, knock on wood, that means that there's extra. So, I mean, the city always allows for any kind of emergency that happens, and, certainly built into professional policing, professional firefighting, and professional engineers and operations, there is a way for them to take care of those unforeseen events.
Good.
I just also want to say in terms
They have the
of.
discretion, the department has the discretion to respond appropriately to an emergency. The financial outfall of that we deal with after the fact.
Okay.
That's
So
correct.
making a budget situation does not prevent Steve from making a decision when he
Emergency.
needs to make it.
Yeah, okay, good.
A
Good.
boat hitting a bridge.
A boat hit.
Well, right, I
good
mean,
Lord, we ran
Exactly.
into that yesterday.
Yes,
No, I ran into the traffic
Oh,
now.
did you? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's all right.
The only thing I'm gonna say along that line is, management could, I hate to say it, the management could also go in with that approach. Hey, we're going into 2018, this week I have to send the calendar out and actually just ask the mayor, what assumptions do we go forward with? That is something like management can say, every single person do not even submit a budget that's, it has to be 2% less. So that is something we can do. So I hope that's just not the path we decide to go down in this room, because I hope it's maybe some other analysis, other questions, other review, maybe other suggestions, only because a flat percentage of a decrease, that's something management or mayor could ask for the first pass. So hopefully we'll come up with other ideas and solutions.
but you're all working for the city. I mean, you're not, I'm not,
No.
right? Everybody else is working for the city of Green Bay in here, right?
Yes.
Indirectly, we are. If you're a
Well, I mean,
taxpayer.
yeah, but you know what I mean. I mean, we're just really, we're
No, I
not drawing a
understand.
check, okay? So y'all are drawing a check. So I'm thinking that, you know, you all would have a lot more to bring to the table since you're working here than I could ever. I mean, I could give you some ideas, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I think, you know, let's analyze some of the components of the city too. Like, I don't know what, and I believe a lot of this is available online without having to subscribe to it, correct? Or,
I don't know if that's
don't know.
available.
I know Wistax, I know Todd.
Yeah, we actually had asked for more of those books.
Yeah, you gotta pay for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a, but, you know, the guy does an amazing job, so everyone that uses them really benefits from it. And I know the Taxpayers Association, we always purchase that
Okay.
because it's something that the school board will go to. All of us look at those same figures, and that's a real good way to approach this, because then we're not cherry picking from, oh, this guy's stats look better than, so if we can sort of use that as a benchmark anyway, I think that's a,
And this tends to be a starting point.
yes.
Because there's differences in accounting systems, so for example, you know, you can look at police protect, or fire protection in that book, and Green Bay is gonna look very expensive compared to Appleton. Well, guess what, Appleton doesn't do ambulance.
Oh,
That
okay.
makes a big
Yeah.
difference, you know, but the book doesn't say that, so you gotta start with this stuff, and then start peeling back.
But you have a
the layers
revenue
of-
stream from ambulance, right?
What's that?
You have
We
a
do,
revenue
yes,
stream,
we have a
right?
revenue stream.
But not everybody pays their bills either.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah,
just
and-
want to show the budget book that I was just passing around. I'm kind of,
Oh.
it's just graphical, but it kind of shows that bottom chart. Kevin, right there, kind of shows, there's your by department. That was the 2017
Okay.
budget. It kind of shows the big four sections that are the most expensive. Then you have all your little departments in between. The one on top just says in total dollars, not by department, by line item. Is it salaries, benefits? Is it office supplies? Is it equipment and fuel? So those are just, that's the 17 budget. Obviously, we'll be working on 18 soon.
Is your debt service going to creep now with the increase in interest rates? Is that a consideration that you have to?
It's something we do look at.
All right, yeah.
I don't know if you have long-term bonds at
I was gonna say,
stable
most of
rates
them
or
would have
what?
been, most of them are already locked in with long-term bonds.
Okay.
Every year we bond a new, we bond for new debt, but most of the debt would be, you know, we will do any refunding or any refinancing as the rates go down, and in that we can cover our costs of new issuance if we have to refund or refinance. But otherwise, they're really locked into a long-term, the rate is kind of locked in.
That's mostly capital improvement.
Capital improvement,
So the
infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure.
At
capital.
this point, how does the figures look as far as, have we overspent, underspent?
For 2017. I have to think we're pretty close on track. I do a month, I meet with the mayor on a monthly basis. I've only done through May. I don't think I haven't run all the analysis through the end of June yet, but at that point, we were on track. We had a couple revenue streams that seemed that they were slightly ahead at this point. Expenses, actually, we're looking a little better than budget through 5 months. I think we had more open positions in the first couple of months. So we do also budget for open positions, but it seems like we're running, at the moment through May, we seem to be running a little bit ahead of it. Again, that's 5 months out of 12.
You agree, Pam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one other question on, what's the actual amount, figure that we have in let's say our money that we have set aside, in other words, that's in the bank for the city of Green Bay?
Do you mean as a reserve?
Yes, as a
Or
reserve.
well, I know we have about a $4.7 million reserve, and really, that is, we use toward the end of the year. We hold that as money that we can use for operating costs, because as you know, we have a calendar budget. The state gives us so many $1 million. However, we get 85% of that money in November. So the money we need to pay for our operating, we get a large chunk of that in November. So there is, within our books, like built in our investment accounts, we have about an extra $4.7 million to help get us through. It's really that time period, really October, November. Pretty much you've spent all your tax money you've collected early in the year, and we're waiting for the rest of the state and state shared revenue to come in November. I don't know if that's the question you were asking.
That's the
Like, how
problem
much do
the
we have?
school system
Yeah,
has
it's the
as
timing
well.
of
It's
when you
got
get the
this
reimbursement.
float, they've got to float this debt for a period of time, and that would be
Well, as
something
far
we
as
might
that-
want to,
So what
As
other,
far as that 4.7 million, that's the total that the city has in reserves?
no, not in reserves.
How much is in reserves then?
I'd have to pull some numbers for you. Kind of, we have different reserves for, we have money set aside for different programs. I could run you,
Let's say, just for an example, let's say we wanted to put $5 million down on building the new police station. Would it be $5 million on hand right at this point?
No.
So in other words, we don't have a lot of reserve money as far as if we want to do a capital project.
it's sitting in what they call a fund balance. It's really the money that, at the end of the year, you have a budget, you collected so much money, did you have more revenues than expenses, more expenses than revenue? You have a fund balance, it's kind of like a checkbook. At the end of the day, if you had more revenue than expenses at the end of the year, your fund balance goes up. It's basically like your checkbook balance goes up. So at this point, we have a fund balance policy that says you have to have, in that fund balance, you should be somewhere between a 17 and 25% of your expenses is what your fund balance should be. That also affects in the long run, and when you're borrowing, when you go to your Moody's and your ratings calls, they look at to see what kind of fund balance you have, and as that drops, it's less likely, we may get a worse rate when we're borrowing, or they could actually drop our rating, and which ends up giving us not as great rates. So right now, the city is anywhere, it's supposed to be between 17 and 25. We are sitting at right around 20%, so we're kind of in the middle. Could you tap something from your fund balance? Sure, maybe $500,000, $1 million, but that's going to, if next year, that could bring your fund balance down closer to your 17, 15%. Now you're getting in jeopardy where they're saying that is what they feel is the right amount to have. And so if you want to say it's a reserve, it's really a balance for you to work with, but we do have a guideline and we want to stay within that. So
So you get $17 million in reserves.
17 to 25% of your expenses.
Okay, but your expenses are
Are-
$106 million.
I'm going to back up, yep, that is a general fund and some other funds. Yep, so if you look at the general fund, that, it's a fund balance for the,
And this might be helpful if I could get a copy.
absolutely.
I have
And
it.
That
I
way-
put a
that way,
report.
then I could maybe sit down with you like we
Yep.
did on the transit, because, I read an income statement and a balance sheet, that's really all, and I know that this is all different, okay? You know what I'm talking about, okay? And so what's relevant in what I,
The subtotal for general fund is about 82 million.
So Kevin, would you like a
Okay.
copy of the budget book?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Five, I think.
Transit's a separate
Yeah,
account.
five.
okay, so
So when
You've got
Diana's
yours,
talking,
okay.
we're talking,
is 82,
Right.
okay, okay, so that's the expense, 82, is what the
Diane.
expense is.
Well, that-
I'll get those to them.
the general,
downstairs, I can bring it right now.
82.6 in general fund is what you're talking about,
Yes.
Terry.
Correct.
Okay,
Good.
all right, gotcha, okay. So like the debt service, for instance, which is a significant chunk of the budget right now. I mean,
Correct.
it's
Yes.
the same as Public Works.
Yes.
Correct.
Is that mostly interest, or what percentage of that is like actual principal reduction, would you say? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Very important.
Because that I think is relevant.
Have those numbers, I just.
Yeah,
wanted to-
no, and I get that, but those are, as you go through the recording of this, these are kind of some of the questions that I would want to know as to what percentage of that is principal versus, principal reduction versus just interest on that, because if we're just carrying, if this is a
Yep.
25,
No.
30 year,
Couldn't agree more.
who knows?
By the way, I didn't mention, but I was 20 years in finance,
Well,
so
there you go. And you want one of these
that was
tables.
all the stuff that I'd always,
But this would be very
Try and
helpful, as I
analyze
said,
a
this would be
little.
very helpful to me on this. So like, that would be a question that I would want to know, since that seems to be, well, it's a significant portion of the overall budget, is payback. So, and I guess I'd like to kind of know what that's been, is that percentage remain constant over like the last 10 years, or is that something that is?
In general,
crept
debt
and
service
crept and
has
crept?
held or reduced.
Okay, that's good news.
That's
That's good
been
news.
a priority.
Steve, do you know what our per capita, say, green space or public lands per capita, where we rank in the state? I'm just curious.
Offhand, I don't.
Okay. What our acreage and, what we're maintaining, let's put it that way.
When you say public land, you mean parks, or you mean?
Well, it's gonna be all, of it. We're maintaining
And right of way
everything.
and all
He's
that
maintaining
thing.
everything,
Okay.
right?
No,
Well,
No?
no, Parks
Oh,
does.
Parks, okay, so that's separate, excuse me.
County has some of it.
Yeah, well, yes, no, I know that.
that's where things get a little tricky.
Even if we had a
Well, it's gonna take some
General
digging,
idea.
because
I don't mean to make
it's
it-
not too, well, no, it's not too hard to actually query our
Okay.
property tax records and find all of the property that's municipally owned. But we do have some pretty significant tracts of land which are associated with waterways and
Right.
and parkways. So we may have a lot of publicly owned property associated with Baird Creek or with the East River watershed that's publicly owned. Some of it's maintained because it's East River Astor Park. Some of it is Baird Creek Conservancy and it's woodlands.
Yep.
So
different level of service.
it's definitely gonna take some
Okay.
digging into, okay, and,
Well, then let's pare that down, and what are you maintaining? The acreage you're maintaining.
and that I think we can try to,
Yeah, I'm just curious,
So
it's
we'll
like
know.
one more, because you've got capital expenditures, I mean, these are things the city's going to have all the time, so just look at that and see where we rank and get some all those comparisons, I think, are going to help us to identify where we're spending our money.
Right.
Not that we have to cut there or something, because I would agree with you, first thing I want is to be safe in my home.
Right.
So police and fire, they don't get a pass, but they certainly get a different ranking in my mind.
Sure.
So what
And
I
it's
hear-
changing in this city, so, you know, it just is. We're growing.
We had $1 million increase last year in the debt service. Is
Yeah,
that,
that's-
I mean, that's significant,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, it's $1 million. What was that? Does anybody remember?
we'd have to go back and take a look to see.
Because we went from 17.7 to 18.7, there's $1 million bucks. Okay, so,
We needed that million.
well, that's
50,000,
kind of what I would, I mean, those are kind of the things that I, you know, that's when if I just, you know, because
That's a good one.
I would like to
To look
just
at.
spend some time, I guess. I mean, I don't know how long you all wanted to meet today, but if I can get one of these and I can highlight, then call with questions, and then I have some stuff that, you know, I can, you know,
So let me just recap what I think I'm hearing so far. We're kind of talking about, like I said, because we're just gonna record these, we're not gonna probably do formal minutes. So, you know, we're talking about essentially item 2 and then potentially item 6 on the agenda. And so I hear we should do an analysis of the way that we spend money. We should perhaps ask the staff members, the department heads, to look at 2.5% savings within their budget. We're curious about how we spend money in various ways. How is our police protection compared to other places, our fire protection? What areas do we maintain that we spend money on? That is what I'm hearing so far.
That's correct.
Couple-
One other question,
couple points.
let's say on the, I'll ask this Diane, on the fire department, what is the total amount that the fire department, their budget?
He has the book in hand.
Sorry.
Actually,
For the city of Green
It
Bay?
is also
You can
our
find
fire-
it as you
Okay,
meet.
how much are we spending then?
22,700,000.
22 million.
Okay. At the figure of 2.5%, what would that figure come to?
400,000.
400 grand, yeah.
And police is a
Or
little
more.
under, so theirs would be,
So then
More like
we're looking
500.
at that 2.5%
Yeah,
cut.
more like
across.
500.
It'd be a little north of 5.
I would like to see kind of where this debt service is going, what projects or what special bonding, I think.
Yeah, there was a big jump that
Yeah,
one year.
I'd like to look at this a little bit, if
Does
we could
anyone
get some
know what that was
information on the
from?
debt service.
I certainly could get you
Yeah,
that.
$2 million
because
change.
yeah, that's $1 million, so I mean, that wasn't just an increase in tax, something
I think
was
some of
bonded
those
big
were actually,
time.
some of those were actually TIF-related projects.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
There was some,
Okay.
money, I think in particular was the HUD loan.
what was the HUD loan?
It was for the Northland, however it was backed, it's not on, it's not in the general fund.
Okay,
So
Where is it then?
And
It shows
is
up
that-
right here though as a general fund.
it's under the 453 fund.
Right, the debt service, that's total debt
That's total debt.
issued by the city.
That's why
Okay,
it's
so
not
there
in the
may-
general fund, the
There may
301.
be debt service payments that are being
There
made by a
is.
source other than the general fund.
Correct, sanitary
So we
storm,
have-
This
sewer.
looks like
With-
it's a general fund component, right?
Oh, right here.
No, because it's
Oh, it's down below, it's
Yeah,
down
I was gonna say,
below.
there's a subtotal there.
That's
Okay,
everything.
but there's only one debt service.
correct, that combines all debt
I understand that.
issued by the city.
No, and I get that, and whoever's paying for it, that's fine, but, those are things that
Thank you,
I think
I appreciate
that
it.
we ought to know,
Yep, no, it's a good question.
as to where, because that's an area, I don't know what, again, the ratios are in your business, but if you
Okay,
have,
yours is marked up already, right?
if
thank you.
if that continues to creep, that's how I think cities, well, I'm not saying we're like Detroit, but Detroit, that's what happened in Detroit. Well, all of a sudden, they're borrowing, and the bulk of their budget goes to cover the debt. And I don't know if 18% debt cost is a reasonable thing in a community of this size or not. I don't know.
Look it up. I'm sure it's in that book.
It is,
I don't
it is.
know how I'd even begin
It is
to
in the
find
book,
it.
but we could find
Yeah,
it.
I don't know where I would.
So those are good questions, and if, I'm not saying staff has to do all that homework, but you might have
Oh,
better,
that's what we do.
yeah.
Well, I don't want to make busy work for you, so
Yeah.
if you say, look, that's
No,
not
no,
relevant,
if
just
it's-
say that's.
If
that's
it's work
that's
that
not-
links to something, then it's not busy
Yeah,
work.
okay, well, I don't want to have you
point.
doing stuff that, you don't think is relevant either, because I think those are all discussion points, so.
So for the next meeting, because this book does have a lot of that information, there is about 6 categories in which they break it down. It may be easy for us to pull out the 6 categories, what Green Bay is, maybe let me know what other municipalities would kind of like to have us pull out that number, just put it on a quick spreadsheet, so you can kind of have quick comparisons, maybe even a
Or
quick
you can just
chart.
copy those pages. for
Right.
us. That would be nice.
Yep, and then we can just highlight the item that's Green
Yeah.
Bay, and then you can look around it. Again, it's just.
And we
the
can
way
do a
they-
little research on our own that way.
Okay.
Good.
I'll put in my 2 cents worth. Now, my view is definitely along Public Works, that's where I've been. And I understand Mr. Grenier's concern, when you mentioned cutting the 2.5%, everybody doing that and putting their proposals on the
I
table.
don't agree with that, but.
Just as you referenced before, police and fire, well, that's important to have, and I think that's where DPW takes the brunt on this every time that it comes to this type of a situation, is that DPW doesn't be deemed as important as police and fire until the streets aren't plowed and the
Mhm.
sewers are backing up. Then we're important, whereas police and fire is looked at as important every day. The other thing I'll just throw out there in the past, and I'm sorry I don't have a specific example, but having worked for DPW for a long time, it seems like when the alderpersons make a decision on what they're gonna do to save budget, and it kinda cuts on city services, as soon as those city services affect one of their constituents, a phone call comes and DPW is responding to that. So if you're going to cut city services, then you have to stick to your guns and cut the city service, and then when your constituents call, you can't, well, we'll get my constituent in, we'll get that constituent in. That happens a lot, sorry to
Yeah,
say.
you don't want to cut where it's going to cost you more in the long run. I just think that is the dumbest way to approach.
Well,
just
and I think his
doing
point is,
across the
if you're
board
gonna
cuts.
cut, you gotta stand up and
Yeah.
get behind the cut.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
And follow through on it.
yes.
Yep.
Steve's point about untouchables, I mean, something that really not for this group to deal with, but part of reality is police and fire are untouchable politically. I can't tell you how many times I have watched at city council where there's a good money savings opportunity, I think, in police and fire, and some alderman plays the public safety card. And all of a sudden, everybody collapses.
And bear in mind, I don't say, I'm not trying to pick on police and
No.
fire.
Right.
Okay?
Nor are we trying to pick on
But
you.
I understand why you said that, because I have viewed the same thing.
Well, and this might not be the year to make these big drastic cuts if we have knowledge that by, there are, sometimes you need to spend money to save money, okay? And we want to make certain that we're not, the gutting aspect is not generally a great idea. So if we kind of, we should be looking at things, but we should be looking also at the long-term impact of that. And this might not be the year to make all these cuts, when we maybe could take some of this money to make reductions for future savings. I'm just,
Yeah.
looking
Good
at
point.
things, because those are some things also that I think that we should consider, that, if we're gonna cut this, maybe we shouldn't cut this because this is gonna either increase revenue or decrease expenses having this, and that, you would know more obviously about that, because your equipment and capital intensive.
But the whole reason that I brought the point up originally is I'm not necessarily of an opinion relative to whether certain services are off limits or not, okay? If the community supports a larger police and fire presence for public safety purposes, then that's what the community supports. That changes how I need to approach how I'm looking at this budget, because I may have services that are more want than need, okay? Me collecting brush at the frequency that I do. My bulk program, the way that we're administering that bulk, okay, there's a lot of services that we do that citizens have demanded. And if the citizens desire to have a stronger police and fire presence for public safety purposes is stronger than the Cadillac services for their quality of life issues, okay, that's fine. If the alders are gonna back that up and support it, that may mean that Public Works has to carry a larger burden than a straight 2%, 2.5% across the board. That's why I need to understand what we're looking at in an approach, because am I looking at trying to find 2.5%, or am I looking at trying to find 4%, because the public simply will not accept the police department reducing by 2.5%?
Well, and the bottom line is whatever this committee does is,
Well, it's advisory.
it's advisory in nature anyway, so, we can come up with some ideas, but that doesn't mean that,
But I do think it's gonna carry a lot of weight.
do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Because you all, I think, would be carrying the weight already since you're working for the city, and there's just the two of us, But no, I'm very happy to add anything I can that might be helpful.
I think it's been a good discussion as far as different opinions and different ideas that have been presented. And I think that the department heads can, take a look and see if they could do a 2.5% cut. And see if there's areas that they can cut that, might just work out.
Yeah, I always,
It's just a number that we
there were
gave
some
out.
good approaches taken by businesses where if someone found or an employee came forward, give them a reason to validate where they saw. And that particular department then might get a small increase just for the reason that they found some good savings that were savings, truly savings, not just cuttings. There's a difference there completely. So I always think the reward approach
Well,
gets you a lot further. So
I've got a little bit of an
you need a
ulterior-
new piece of
Well,
equipment.
no, I've got
or
a little bit of
something.
an ulterior motive in volunteering to be on this task
Uh-huh.
force, to be honest with you. And what I'm hoping is that during some of this discussion, we may get some independent validation on how we've been approaching some things, If I've got a prominent business owner and a member of the Brown County Taxpayers Association who come in and say, you know what, we actually took a pretty needle look at what these guys are doing, and yeah, there are opportunities for savings, but by and large, these guys are really
A lot of
good.
it's hard to pick into the...
Did you say prominent?
Yes.
Yeah. But a lot of it's, that's always been a difficult thing for us as a group, the taxpayers, is going to look at the school system's budget. Oh my God. That's a full-time job.
Sure.
And they have full-time personnel to deal with that. And I always thought, gosh, this would be better if it were somehow structured, especially with the ability of the internet. Known programs, if they didn't put it in their format and put it in one that we could all understand and readily access, I think the community might have a better look at how their money's being spent. That's all. That's all we've ever wanted to do in that group. It's not, we're not out to cut. We're out to see the best use of our taxpayers' money.
And the reason I say that
Most
is
efficient.
because there are a lot of opportunities that come at competing ends, okay? One of the things Kevin talked about was our debt service,
Yeah,
okay?
I would agree.
Obviously, it's a great place to look. Now, from my perspective, okay, my capital program is funded almost exclusively off of levy-supported debt,
Okay.
okay? I don't know how to characterize.
So you bond on your-
I am being questioned as to why I am only delivering 1.5 to 2% of city streets being maintained on an annualized basis. And I'm being challenged to step that up, okay? So let's say we go from 1.5 to 2% up to 3.5 to 4%, somewhere in that neighborhood. On an annual basis, I am looking at adding 3 staff engineers. That's going to be in the neighborhood of $450,000 worth of levy-supported annual expense for salaries, fringe benefits, that kind of, okay? So now I just added $400,000, $450,000 to the budget. And I'm looking at incurring probably another $4.5 million, $5 million in levy-supported borrowing, so that's going to increase the debt service by debt service, $4.5 million over 20 years, we're probably looking at adding $250,000 of debt service.
That's how you bond, 20 years on most.
Depends on what we're bonding for. If it's municipal infrastructure, it has a life expectancy of in excess
So
of
you
20,
bond
so
for
we'll
the
take
20,
20.
which then is, that's a fair way of spreading for the people that live
Correct.
here now and don't live here or whatever. No, I get
Yeah.
all, okay. Trucks, things like, are those short-term?
Most of our, at least for me, most of my equipment is funded through, on our operating budget, there's a line item in there that talks about, see your budget.
You know, if, for instance, and I don't know if the county's still doing this, but the county actually built their own roads, as I remember.
They do a lot of road work.
They do a lot of road work
Got their own
themselves.
asphalt
And-
plant.
And that might be
I
one
have
of.
a city equipment usage
All right.
fund.
Which means it's funded by the general taxpayer.
All right, is that depreciation of equipment? Or what is it?
No.
Basically, what we have is a percentage of what the state allows equipment to be charged out
Okay.
at. Every time a piece of iron rolls through the door, we issue an invoice to
Gotcha.
somebody,
All right,
oftentimes to ourselves.
That's not
okay.
right.
That money comes out of the operating budget and goes into a reserve fund for equipment replacement.
Okay.
So it's not debt supported, comes out of our operating budget, and we kind of squirrel enough away every year to buy whatever we need the following year.
As you, and I'm not telling you, I'm never going to tell anybody what to do, but I would look at what, if anything, in my budget I could do to offset. Now, as I said earlier, it's like sometimes we got to spend money to make money in the printing industry. So if investing in an asphalt plant, concrete equipment, you know, I mean, if that reduces your cost from what you outsource, and you would know that, and I would not, but if you have someone that you outsource this to, and your staff of engineers and everybody else can be doing this, perhaps you could accomplish a number of things. Your revenue, your expense might go up, but the revenue savings, because of the additional work that you do that you were subcontracting out for in the past, because we're assuming you're subcontracting because we think it's less expensive to do, but it might be cheaper for the city to get into the road business, I don't know, or
Sure.
I don't know. You know, you're in the garbage business and there's waste management, you know, so I mean, I think Bellevue contracts out for their services, but there might be opportunities because of the size of your department, that there might be some savings in adding more things that you can do that currently you outsource, possibly. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out. It's just not a going in there and slash and burn type mentality, but, you know, spending money sometimes saves money.
Yep. And
Well, we've had a big lesson with the state and their transportation fund. I hope everybody watching what's on down there, they have not done
And
the
that-
yeoman's job of managing all of that. And
that's where not having
What a
to
mess.
suffer through what we suffer through each year with our budget process, you know, it is making sausage. Where you guys are at a little bit of a disadvantage, Diana referred earlier to the expenditure restraint program, and that's kind of where we get caught in multiple, there's multiple logjam areas that we have to work through and navigate.
you don't have those restrictions.
Well, but that's,
Well-
as I said, that's just a concept you know,
Sure,
that I
and that's,
would look at.
basically, we take, the way the state looks at it, they look at your expenses and they discount all your revenues. Doesn't matter what, you have a benevolent benefactor who comes to you with $8 billion in trust, and you can use the interest off of that, or you can tap into the principal and go hog wild. State doesn't care. Your revenues are irrelevant. What are your expenses? Your levy-supported expenses.
Okay, but you're not adding, you're reducing the levy.
Doesn't
By
matter,
having
what are
revenue.
your expenses?
Okay,
What
some
is-
things I just.
Yeah, I
Okay, no, I'm trying
No, I
to
get
give
you,
you
no, I
an
get you, I
idea
get you.
where we run into
It doesn't make a
problems.
lot of sense to me.
You're absolutely correct. I need you to run for state office.
That would be like a balance sheet, okay?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Very unique program.
And that's where
Okay.
ERP gets us, is they look at your expenses, there's a formula that plugs in based on
Expenses,
net
but not
new
your
growth
revenue
and
generation, I
CPI
see.
And
and
that's
things
what
like that.
Diana was making reference to earlier. If we exceed those expenses, we punch out of that program, and
Gotcha.
we lose $2.5 million.
All right, yeah,
dollars.
that's-
So if I can make,
They make it
if my
very expensive.
expenditure, if that expenditure that busts ERP generates enough revenue
Got
to
it.
cover what I've lost under ERP, then we're money
Got
ahead,
it.
yeah.
Got it, okay, all right.
Would we want to invite a state representative or someone that, well, that has some component of finance, you know, the finance committee or something like that? Because we're in, they haven't nailed this budget down, and even when they do, it'd be nice to know, you know, if they're looking at things like that, you know, tweaking that ERP program, or maybe suggesting that they tweak that ERP program from your perspective as smarter operations.
So do you want to, it seems like there's a lot of work
I
to
don't know how
do.
many meetings we're gonna,
Well-
well, you told me, so. I-
Right,
I know
Mr.
that.
Vanderleest had conceived, you know, anywhere between 3 and 5 meetings, and, I mean, I think it would be interesting to invite someone. In many ways, you're right that this is a good time because they're not finished with the transportation portion, which then, you know, our neighbors and constituents look at us and say, hey, why aren't the
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
roads
why aren't-
fixed? Well, you
Yeah.
know, part of that is the state's not really.
Mess.
Right, exactly. So, but it seems like we have a lot of work to do. Mr. Vanderleest did conceive of inviting some guests to come talk to
Okay.
us, and I'm just wondering about timing.
Yeah, well.
I mean, it seems like it would be
once we're
something-
down the road a little
Yeah,
more, we
yeah.
might,
Maybe they should hear from some, you know,
Oh,
local
absolutely.
neighbors and friends who want to work on the budget, and they need to hear how this all affects
how it
us.
affects us, yeah. I
They-
think that's important.
They kind of know, but it'd be good to hear.
Well, they kind of know, but it's
Always good to hear.
always good to be in their face.
Right. So what I'm hearing
What
from
we
this.
elect them for, right?
That's right. From this
Keep
portion,
them on their toes.
we are going to, for the next meeting, so you've got the budget books, which Kayla brought up, which is great. We're going to make some copies of pages from the municipal facts book. We don't have sacred cows for this committee. Police and fire are not sacred cows, but, you know, we want to be cognizant of keeping public safety, but we want to look at everything and nothing's on.
One meeting, they might be people you're going to invite,
That's,
some of the
Absolutely.
financial people,
Yeah, they would-
you know, but, or I know we've had the new police chief come to our meeting. It was great. I mean, it was a terrific thing to see where he was going to go with things. And I've had Sheriff John come in
Oh,
numerous
gosh.
times. And, you know, those have been very, very good. And I think it's a good
Would you like him at the
discussion.
next
They
meeting?
like it.
Would you like him at the next meeting?
I don't know.
The three biggest, I would
Lynn, you're
think.
representing the fire department.
Yeah.
Certainly. and I'm
Okay,
sure-
so you're the financial arm of it?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely, but the
Okay.
chief would certainly be willing to come in and
Oh, I know,
talk to you
he's-
as well.
I think that's a great idea, because you get the three largest, we have public
Uh-huh.
works, police, and you have fire.
Okay.
And then whoever's responsible for, or the knowledge person of debt service is you.
Information on that, yeah.
And so, I mean, that avoids the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
So to speak.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay.
That's a good.
And then we can look at, then
Thought.
we can talk
Good job.
about those departments as to what we could do possibly.
Or tell them what we're up to. And
Yeah, sure.
again, I think they invite ideas from.
Exactly.
The people they're working with.
And I think that you've gathered that we're not a slash and burn kind of, you know.
It doesn't work.
So what, moving
Doesn't work at home,
forward,
doesn't work.
what types of things do you want, what kind of information do you want to see in order to determine how you'd like to approach some suggestions and advice?
I would like to see 5 years of expenses. That's really all I need. You know, 5 years is, and even that 3 years is fine, but 5 years, if I can get 5 years of expenses for the three largest areas of our expenditures, which is fire, police, public works, and debt reduction.
Debt service,
Debt
yes.
service. If
You
I can
bet.
see what's going on there, then we can, you know, and I'm sure the department heads will be able to fill us in as to what's happening with that, okay? Because that way we can get a good
You
understanding.
get your component
Just
and
for
of that debt
clarification, what
service.
level of
Yes.
detail
So
do you want?
that could be helpful.
I think that what kind of detail, I mean, what is it, 20 lines worth on a?
Well, okay, good point. I mean, do you just want total expenses, or do you want to
No, I
buy?
would like a breakdown of
Let's
expenses.
just do it by the line items.
Yeah, however you're doing it in the book here, I
I mean,
mean,
Yeah.
there's enormous
Yeah.
detail in that book.
yeah, I don't want it for all departments though, and I don't, you know, the graphs and stuff like that just gets it kind of muddled for me, so if I can, you know what, however, you kind of know what I'm looking for, I know you do, because of when we were on transit, you know, I just want the lists, and I really don't need the 5 years, 3 years is fine, but then the commentary that goes with that list would be, you know, so that nobody walks into a room and doesn't know, because I would want to know, why do you have a reductions, and then why are you having increases, or what is contributing to those types of things, so that we get kind of a fuller picture as to what's happening in that area, okay?
So,
Because you might have had like years and years worth of deferred maintenance. Years you could have had on your vehicles and your trucks and all that stuff, and all of a sudden, boom, we got slammed because
Right,
of that.
but I know what you're going to see
Yeah.
is, in 1 year, DPW, our salaries and fringe benefits took a nosedive. Okay, why did
Yeah.
we have we went automated,
Doesn't-
and we allowed 6 positions to retire through
Okay,
attrition,
gotcha.
because I didn't need
Okay.
those guys throwing garbage anymore, the truck
Yeah,
heads.
no, that was a good
No,
move.
but those
No,
are
but I'll
things-
be able,
that's
I
the
mean,
stuff
I
I'm
was looking
looking
for
for.
that,
That's
our ability to
exactly-
explain those things.
Yeah, and you guys know that.
Right.
All the department heads are gonna know all of that detail. And if we got $1 million as a result of the Hotel Northland on last year, I'd wanna know that. And whatever other things, because a lot of that is future economic development, because this is gonna create the tax base, which is gonna offset that. I mean, you know, that's stuff that the county would know, okay?
Another factor to figure in is how much growth the city of Green Bay has had this past
Oh,
year.
yeah.
I don't think the city's been growing at a real
No.
fast pace, like a 1% last year.
population?
So that's a factor,
We
is
had
our,
2015
our revenues.
actuals for each
Okay.
line item.
We're getting landlocked.
Because if we were growing at 4%,
All right,
we
this
have more
That's the way
revenue.
to go.
Yeah, I didn't know what you might have on your knee, okay?
We've
So-
been, I think, pretty stagnant, maybe the last 4 or 5 years. as far
You're
as-
just talking straight population growth?
I'm not talking population, I'm talking about revenue, tax revenue, what have you.
So tax revenue,
Yeah, it's all there.
Okay, but now, where am I right here? This is, which department is this?
That's general fund totals right there.
Okay, I
But
really
you
want
have-
to
You have it by
celebrate.
department, further, also, here's
Okay, Public Works, okay, so then I have everything in here, is what I have to realize. Okay, that's fine.
They happen to have three divisions, so
Perfect.
you're gonna kind of
Okay.
see on top, there's three divisions for public works and it.
Okay, so we got engineering, okay, so, all right, if I have questions, I'll call you.
Absolutely.
Or call me and I can,
Okay,
we can take
perfect.
5
All
minutes, I
right,
can walk you
great.
through
I
the
didn't
book
know,
too.
I didn't know that you had the 5 years already in here, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Well, 2
well,
years.
3 years,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
3.
That's
Fire-
fine.
Fire department starts on page 106 for those.
All right, so we're just going to then tag this for you guys. All right, so we're Public Works, all right, and then 106.
What was Public Works, the page?
That is, Public Works begins on page 110.
There's an index in front of it.
Oh, thank
Okay,
you.
got
You'll be
it.
able to-
And what did you say was, fire was what?
106.
Okay, thank you. All right, good. That's very helpful. That's what I'm looking for. I appreciate that. I didn't know how detailed you were in your book or that. Okay, perfect. Great, okay.
Yeah, I think police, fire, and public works all run together.
Run together.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All
Police
right.
is gonna be immediately
Right,
before
right,
fire.
correct.
Okay, perfect. That's what I need.
And then other things that people would like to see, Kevin, Mr. Parents, Lynn, meeting stuff. Kind of good
I
hand.
think it's sort of, to me, the thing I've watched a lot of time is debt service, how it's being paid down versus our interest costs and, you know,
And I think
I'm
that
sure
might
you've
be the
done a
one
good
area
job of
where we need to do a
refinancing
little
every
bit of work, is to
opportunity you
identify
can.
total debt service.
sometimes there's the cost of
that's being
refinancing.
drawn
and
From,
I don't always recommend it.
the one that affects the budget is levy support debt
Sounds good.
service.
Kevin, do you have anything that you'd like to see for the next year?
I'm good, listening.
You're like, you know, like.
That's why we sat together, so we
Right.
can
Stand up at the same time. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you guys having me.
And I'm just gonna say your timing on our tentative timelines, you know, if we were to try to make a suggestion and make changes before the 2018 budget, I mean, it's really very similar to what the agenda says. The final books information is rolled together in September. We continue to analyze, look at it, say this is never gonna work, we're outside of expenditure restraint. That happens in September.
What date? Can I ask what date?
Well, to work backwards, our joint finance committee meeting is on November 7th. But to work backwards, that means I have to put my public hearing notice into the Press Gazette on 10/24, which means it has to be completely finalized. Our book
Okay.
has to be ready to go on the 24th. And so
Good.
that gives us the first part of October to put the book together. So very, very end of September is when we would really
So
have to.
the early part of September is really when you're gonna have most of your numbers,
Correct. We actually asked the departments
Pulled
to have their
together.
information in.
not
and have it-
published, but
We're
they're pulled
actually
together.
working on them right
Yeah,
now.
no, I'm sure.
Our first pass is to have the departments have it in by August 18th is the first
Okay,
pass.
good.
And our preliminary budget hasn't even been distributed, so know whether it's end of August. We could slide these dates a little bit. But the departments really are expected to have their information in by the end
So
of
you might have
August.
a preliminary draft sometime in later August?
The-
I mean, nobody's gonna hold anyone to anything there, but
the-
it might give a indication of where things are going or drifting or
As you
coming
expect, I
back.
don't know the percentage for sure, but salaries, benefits, and wages are huge as you.
Oh,
in
yeah,
the-
that's always the cost of
And
business.
we are working on, we just started, the HR and finance, Pam, have been just starting to pull the numbers together. As they were the new compensation study plan that just got approved. There was a little wrenches in because now we have to set up all new tables. And it's effective December 1st of this year, which is gonna make next year easier because now we are down
Okay.
less salary tables.
So that's what he'd like to see.
However, to budget for it, we have to set up new salary tables. So it changes our process of what we normally do at this time. So
And
we
it
are
may change
working-
your expenditures. Just
Will it change? Yes.
Footnote under that.
Are we under class and comp or anything else going on this year?
No,
Okay.
What was your question?
that's all done.
Class and comp
Class
or any
comp
other
was already done.
surprises or stuff like that?
No.
Okay.
So yes, the dates in here, it would really be, if we were to make a change for this year, it would be early September, mid-September, kind of, our drop deadline almost for this year. Well, there still could be recommendations that could be brought to the council.
Sure.
And on the floor, joint finance personnel, they could take some of the recommendations and they can still make changes at that time.
That's
Um,
their prerogative.
And again, you know, obviously there's things that could come out of here that maybe don't go in 18, but could be for a 19 budget also.
So, next meetings, since we're all sitting here, I think we need to get a meeting schedule. And then I have one final question about item number 5, about contacting city employees for input on budget savings. But let's first do the calendar. Schedule some more meetings. So we can pick this time again, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now.
I'm gone from the 19th of August to September
September,
1st.
okay.
Give or take. I don't want to be, but I'm going to be gone. Should say. What to
So
do.
if
Let me
we
just look
did,
at that schedule. I can do it anytime.
actually, well, let's see. If we met on the 31st and the 14th
Mhm.
of August,
That's
that would
good.
be 2 more meetings before you
Yeah,
leave.
I think that's a good idea.
Does that make sense to everyone else?
It's fine with me.
Okay.
What are those dates again?
Sure. So that's July 31st. We have 5 Mondays in July. July 31st.
Same time, 10 o'clock? every day?
Same
Okay.
bat time, same bat channel,
Yes, ma'am.
everyone?
Yes,
Okay. And then August 14th.
I will not be at that one.
Okay.
I'll be out of town. I get back the evening of the 14th, but I won't be at the meeting.
In the morning. Is that okay? Is that
Unless you want to make it,
You wanna make
the
it
15th, or is that not a
15th?
good day?
Well, 15th is council, but that's fine. Let me just look at
It's
my,
up to the rest of the
I'm going to have
committee.
to check on that, but I'll know more.
you want to make it August? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but what I'm saying is, I just need to get that last 2-week thing, because I'm not 100% certain what that date is. I don't have it on my calendar here.
Okay.
But I
Oh.
will let you know.
Yeah, we
and-
might
and
even
if
be
that-
able to go as early as the 11th.
Yeah, I was just.
Yeah, because I
Oh,
could
sure.
go the 11th, easy, I could hit,
Yeah.
August 11th,
Sure.
easy,
That would
sure.
be
Is
all right
August
for
Yeah,
me.
11th okay with
sure, that's a-
everybody?
That's a good, sure.
I will be out.
You're out of town?
I'm sorry, you said August 11th?
August
Yes,
11th.
August 11th.
Yes, August, I'm going to be out of town from August 10th through the 14th.
How about the 9th?
August 9th?
9th is
Sure.
fine.
Yep.
9th works.
Does 9th
That
work
works
for everybody?
Yeah, that works
Good for me.
Okay, let me just look at this. Yep, 9 o'clock I think will work.
So the 31st and the 9th.
I'm just looking
Are you
at,
changing the time to 9 o'clock?
at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
On the
No,
9th.
Yeah,
Okay.
woo, sorry, not earlier, later.
July, and,
Okay,
and the
so
11th.
we have the next 2 meetings, July 31st and August 9th, 10 a.m. Room 604, you all have budgets, we'll get you the information. The information, you've already got your budget, so you already have your question answered about the expenses, police, fire, DPW, and debt service.
Right.
Mr. Vandelis, did you want the tax revenue growth over the last 20 years?
Be fine.
Okay, Diana, is that something?
What is the
Over
question?
20?
Not 20,
5.
5.
5?
5, we have it in the books in 3 years.
Correct, and I'm sorry, what was the question? What was the follow-up?
What you wanted to know about tax revenue growth, not
Changes,
population
yeah.
growth?
Yeah, in other words, from the last few years back.
That gives you growth. That gives you growth of the city, tax base increase.
Yeah, that's all we need.
Tax base increase?
That's correct.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
That I can
In
do.
other words, the new revenues that we're gonna be creating this year, what they're gonna be, if it's 1% or less, or if it's let's hope it's 3 and 4.
And it's just, you're just talking on tax, from tax revenue.
Does
Yeah,
TIF
exactly.
factor into that, to that number? Does the TIF component factor into that number?
When does it?
Well, the question, that is a question, are you looking at just general fund, or are you looking at the other funds within our
That's
budget
awesome.
books? I would think we'd be looking at just general fund.
Okay.
General fund.
Because then it would be not TIF related
All right.
or other revenue
Good.
sources.
Because TIP is one of those things you spend money to make money.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. No, but eventually it shows up as a revenue.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And that's the other thing, like, if we're expecting a big tax revenue increase as a result of a project, I only think of the Northern Hotel, because that's the biggest one that I think we're involved with downtown in terms of what it's gonna do to the property values, right?
The Metro came online, but,
But those are both in,
those are all gonna be in TIFs.
they're in TIF districts, so we're not gonna see, general fund revenues won't increase because the incremental taxes generated as part of the redevelopment.
So they're
gets
already
rolled into
assigned.
TIF.
They're
Yes.
assigned. They're
This is
assigned
the
into-
tax
They're
base
also
that they are,
assigned.
gotcha. And they're paying it right now, right? The
If
TIF.
they're,
like a TIF district. I mean, I get the concept, but I don't know when the timing goes out. You know,
Right.
they get a tax break for so many years, or is it perpetual?
No, it's for so many
How many
years.
years?
So many years.
Sometimes
Gotcha.
they get a break in the down
Okay,
years.
sure.
Sometimes it's a payment
Okay.
up front.
It's
so-
right, okay.
Although we're trying to do more pay-go, so as
Okay,
the
gotcha.
tax money comes in,
But
then the
I
entity
think
gets-
one thing that's worthy to note, even if the developer himself is not incentivized, so let's say somebody moves in next door to the Festival Foods on University Avenue, okay? And requests no compensation from the RDA, has no tax incentive. His property's worth $1 million, he's generating a total of 22 million, or 22,000 in taxes, $9,000 that comes to the city. He builds a facility that's now worth $10 million. So the increment on that 9 million, he's not getting a dime of it. But that doesn't come to the general fund, it goes into the TIF, and then there's cash there to incentivize other projects or for me to build infrastructure
Gotcha. All right,
or.
okay, so that works, all right.
So
Got it.
all the growth in the TIF district.
Stays in the
does-
TIF, or
stays
stays in
in
the pot.
Yep,
Gotcha.
separate
All right.
pot of money.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, also just before we go, invite the chiefs to the next meeting. I need to get someone from real estate and then someone from the HR department. Anyone else that we're missing?
I thought we were just gonna go with the,
Police, fire.
we weren't gonna do all
and-
departments, just the
No.
big, the three.
Yeah,
big
just
ones.
the two chiefs.
Big expenditures.
Oh, but
You
you
said
had
HR.
mentioned, I did mention HR, but maybe we'll invite HR another time because it's about benefits.
Yep.
I-
That would be good.
I don't know how much, well, that's, I mean, everything's on the table, but that's a tough area to
Okay.
be doing.
All
I
right.
think I'd like to look at possibly different things before I start looking at
Got
cuts
it.
and benefits
Okay.
and things like that.
That sounds fine to me.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, that's my
Plans and
opinion.
recommendation and the format.
Alderman Vanderleest, did you get the report from the 2004 budget task force? that
Yeah,
you
we
were
couldn't
looking for?
find it.
Because I got,
We
I
had it in
printed
the
out
mayor's
some
office.
copies of the minutes from those meetings, but.
I didn't get the final report, I don't think. I think
Mm-mm.
Chris Teskey was working.
We don't
No,
have it.
we looked at the mayor's office. No,
So
no,
we
you-
don't we don't
I
have
gotta
that.
get close.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot for
Yes,
having me. I
yep, you
appreciate
bet.
it. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Have a nice day. I'll give you this.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have anything. We looked in the mayor's office.
I know Chris and Anita spend a lot of time on Thursday or Friday looking for that document,
Just
so.
to see what they had, you know, for. a
Yeah, I have
fundraiser.
some minute notes from a budget task force that was done from 2004. If anybody wants a copy, there were about 4 meetings, there's some minute notes.
I'd take a copy.
Yep, I printed, they're the notes from some of the meetings. I don't know if you're interested.
Thanks. See what they were talking about.
Anybody want to?
Anyone else want a copy of the notes from 2004? I have.
Green Bay News Chronicle, where'd that start?
Does anybody else want
See,
to
I
copy
see, anyone
these
else
minutes?
want a copy?
Good.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else?
That's it.
Okay, and so we, like I said, these will be posted on the city website, this
Yeah.
recording, and I'll just, jot down just essentially my summaries that I had said throughout the meeting. I'll just jot those down.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
I have a question for you. Sure. Personal note. They took down a tree in the parkway in front. How do you plan